One of the first people to realise the ramifications of streaming services, or the negative ramifications, was director Martin Scorsese, who of course was the man responsible for films like Goodfellas, Taxi Driver, Mean Streets, Casino, and so many others. And let's just say that after reading a little bit about Martin Scorsese's thoughts on streaming services over the past few days, he was one of the earliest detractors, and he dislikes these streaming services, to say the least. So basically, when asked about them early on, Martin Scorsese wisely pointed out what so many of us have started to realise, that these streaming services are devaluing cinema like nothing ever before. We did have these same arguments, these same points when television appeared on the scene, when home video appeared on the scene, when DVD and Blu-ray appeared on the scene. But I think that this time, it isn't just the boy crying wolf, or the boy who cried wolf. And Martin Scorsese's probably right on the money when he points out that streaming services are devaluing cinema, classic cinema, exploitation cinema, all kinds of cinema. And basically, these streaming services are devaluing movies, the movies we love, to a status of interchangeable content, disposable content, content that'll soon be forgotten, and we'll never remember that it existed. And it is probably, even though it doesn't look like it at face value, it is possibly the biggest crisis faced, at least by the art form of cinema, in its entire existence. So he has quite a few negative things to say about streaming services, a few negative opinions. Aside from the obvious one, the devaluation of cinema, both in America and around the world, Martin Scorsese sees streaming services as basically catering entirely to the lowest common denominator. And this is indeed true for these paid streaming services. YouTube's a little bit different, of course. You can see all kinds of content, and the basic structure of the platform, which I hope the platform realises, is that YouTube is the king of the niche entertainment market, and in a sense, YouTube probably devalues cinema far less than most of these big streaming platforms. So, needless to say, Martin Scorsese was one of the first people sounding the alarm about this sort of thing, about cinema being devalued by streaming services and the ramifications for society. I think it's becoming more obvious as time goes on. We're seeing less theatrical releases. We're seeing a lot of low rent content, and it is no more than content getting greenlit by companies like Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu and HBO Max and any one of the scores of other streaming services out there. So I don't know what the solution is. It seems like the time to push back might have been a fair while ago, but it does seem to be starting. More people are returning to physical media. We're seeing a few minor victories in the cinema. Movies like Obsession and Backrooms have become breakout and very organic theatrical successes. But the irony with these is they aren't entirely a middle finger to technology and a middle finger to new ways of doing things, because at least half of their success, if not more, has been, I guess you'd say, virality. People doing TikTok videos and YouTube videos and so on and so forth. So some of the success of movies like Backrooms and Obsession have been word of mouth, the old traditional ways of getting the word out and building at least a cult following for the kind of independent movies that don't appeal to the masses. But a good deal of their success can also be attributed to the new technology that, not to speak out of turn, but presumably someone like Martin Scorsese dislikes, loathes, even hates. So I guess the moral of the story is, like all problems in life, like all challenges, like all adversity, there doesn't seem to be a black and white solution or a single answer or a silver bullet to solve it. I guess it's just something to be aware of, that we do ensure that we're aware of this, that we basically keep an eye on things, try to retain at least a little bit of our humanity when it comes to the arts, and at least a little bit or a lot of the organic nature of the arts, whether it's filmmaking, music, literature, painting, sculpting, whatever it is, especially in this time of AI, when these things are under attack, arguably more aggressively than at any stage of humanity. So it is important to push back. Obviously, there's never going to be the entire victory that someone like Martin Scorsese, or I guess myself to an extent, would like to see. Because unfortunately, you'll never entirely halt progress. You'll only basically give it a bloody nose and see it temporarily recoil until it begins advancing again, and the time to push back begins again. So I guess that's probably the only real strategy, the real solution to Martin Scorsese's concerns about streaming services devaluing cinema, and basically training these studios to only produce content for the lowest common denominator. As I said, you can go find great art on YouTube that's never going to appeal to the masses, and that's why it only has 100 views. And it's important, that's why it's also important that platforms like YouTube continue to operate in a similar fashion, so that there is always an outlet, maybe not necessarily to profit from art, but at least to make art for people like independent filmmakers, musicians, and authors, and all kinds of artists, and especially budding artists. And Spotify is a good example of that as well. It's easy to dismiss and say, I'm going to be entirely analog, I'm only going to buy vinyl and CDs. But the way I see Spotify is, and I think a healthy way to view Spotify, is as a bit of a sampler. Spotify, in a sense, or at least the way I see it, it really should be a way mainly to discover new music, to discover new artists, and then you kind of defer to things like vinyl and CDs when you're becoming a true fan of an artist or an album. And that's an ethical way, I think, to give money back to these people, to support these people, to support music. And the same can be said for cinema. If you thought a movie was great, you saw it on a streaming service, you really enjoyed it, admired it, whatever, you feel that you might watch it again someday, then it really is ethical to try and pick up a physical copy to keep the entire train rolling. So I got a little off subject here. Probably easy when you're in a place like this. Bit of a rare treat. But back to the subject of the video, Martin Scorsese was one of the earliest detractors of streaming services, and probably with good reason. But by the same token, it isn't practical, and it is difficult to take a black and white approach to these things. And even though his concerns are quite valid, my concerns are quite valid, your concerns are quite valid, they're not always practical. And unfortunately, studio executives aren't going to do what you want them to all the time, unless there's a critical mass of people switching off these streaming services. So it really is a case of putting your money where your mouth is and choosing to opt out, I guess. That's the main thing you can do if you are dead against these streaming services. It's no use complaining and still paying the monthly tiding, because that's not going to move the needle at all. Most protests are largely pointless, and the only protests that ever work are the protests that hit the hip pockets. So we can gripe and complain about these things all we like, but I would be interested to know whether Martin Scorsese does subscribe to any of these streaming services, because the most important first step is switching off. So that's about all I've got today. Hope you enjoyed the video as I went on this little stroll, took a little breather. And if you're enjoying the content on the channel, if you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. And I hope to see you next time. Take it easy.